My next guest has been a key member of Nomura's mobile devices team for the past 10 years. Richard Windsor coordinates the bank's global technology research. Joins me now from Nomura's London offices. Richard, good to see you. Thank you so much.
Maryam.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. So as we have information sort of transferred to the cloud, as we keep hearing about, how long do you think it'll be before we will pretty much stop using hard drives altogether?
We think actually it's going to be quite a while. I mean, if you look at forecast of penetration of cloud computing as an example, I mean, some of the industry people are looking for about 15% penetration by 2014. It's going to be a while. What we think Apple is up to is the idea is to put all of your digital information into one place so that you can access it from any Apple device or any device with Apple software on it, and that is going to be the key. Because we suspect Apple is not really going to be aiming to make money out of iCloud itself, but more about making the service so sticky that everybody buys every device that they own from Apple.
So you're expecting that it will give Apple's hardware devices, sales in those devices, a significant boost?
That is what we think Apple's strategy is aimed at doing. Whether it will be successful or not remains to be seen, because Apple is not alone in this strategy. You've got Google, you've got Microsoft, along with Nokia, also snapping at their heels, vying for exactly the same thing.
Are they going to have a hard time keeping up now?
Well, we think, looking at what Apple have announced, they've raised the bar a little bit to make life a bit more difficult for Google, for Microsoft to catch up, but it's still very, very early days. And one thing worth highlighting is Apple is all singing and all dancing, very powerful at the moment. I would remind everybody to remember when they first launched Mobile Me, which was their first. It didn't really work at all, and it was a bit of a disaster. So we think that, you know, the playing field is still pretty open, so it's too early to tell.
Do you think, Richard, that they would have learned from those mistakes?
That's a good question. One would hope so, and one would hope that it would work immediately out of the box. But these things are a lot more difficult than it sounds, actually. And, you know, you can see other examples throughout the last 10 years or so, when people move into sort of network synchronization. Getting it right is very difficult.
Why? What are the specific sort of obstacles or challenges in this context, the iCloud service?
It's basically the ability for the database to handle huge amounts of information and to know which device is connecting to it, what the user preferences are, and just to make sure that it works in a seamless way, so that when the user takes it out of the box, turns it on, it just works.
And is that the thing? I mean, does that raise the sort of bandwidth challenge? You know, if you want to access movies, for example, that takes up a lot of space.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's going to do. And in fact, you know, this is one of our long-term themes in terms of how to play cloud computing. In fact, if cloud computing takes off, then the demand for network capacity is going to increase even more rapidly than it is already, which leads you straight to the infrastructure providers as potential recipients of huge demand for their products.
And, you know, Richard, you mentioned there that the fact that iCloud is only going to work on Apple devices, you know, it makes it very sticky. You know, Apple, this is part of their strategy, and they're very good at crafting this sort of thing, you know, so that hardware, software services work together in this kind of harmony. But on the other side of the coin, or the other side of the argument, do you think that this is a somewhat closed approach that could perhaps present an opportunity for rivals and competitors who could perhaps offer a service that would work with different platforms?
That is the great question, because the whole thing about open versus closed, it's closed, it's easier to get it to work, but ultimately its market, the addressable market that it faces, is always much less. An open approach where everybody can join has a much greater market appeal, but it's much more difficult to get it to work. Now, what's happened to date is that, and this is where it gets dangerous, is that Apple is really the only one where it really works very well, and if it continues to work very well, it will continue to attract people into its ecosystem, which would mean that perhaps it actually becomes the industry standard, and so the fact that it's closed no longer matters.